And welcome to a brand new episode of the Straight Up Show podcast. I am your host, Calvin, joined with two guest co-hosts. They helped me in one episode, but they're back again so much. Charles C.J. Johnson
What's going on, everybody?
and the cool one, Mr. Dasman. How you doing today, guys?
What's up, cuz?
Yeah, and we say cuz because we are blood-related cousins, but, Dasman like to
Literally.
hear.
No,
Literally.
gang.
But Dasman's my blood cousin back in Louisiana. I consider him my big brother because I don't have any brothers. So, but CJ, you too. We travel the world. We actually have a song. We have a video of singing a Shawn Michaels theme song together.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That was an event in itself, but definitely had a good time. Many miles traveled with
Great time.
CJ, and even longer miles traveled with Dasman. Like I said, like a brother to me. So definitely glad to have you two once again filling in on the Straight Up Show podcast. Like I said, hey, you're always welcome here. So and you guys took me up on my offer, and here you are. But so CJ, if you've heard our podcast before with CJ on it, you know that CJ is a singer, and Dasman, you love art too, but you're big in the comic books. But growing up, and me, I don't know if it's my age, and I'm just getting older now, but like I'm hearing stuff on radio, it's just complete garbage. You know what I mean? And I still go back and listen to like the Temptations and stuff like that because like CJ as a musician, you can kind of understand what I'm saying. And a lot of you that know me know that I used to be a DJ, worked the radio. I'm actually the music you hear on the radio right now, or on the podcast. I made all that music myself, but of course, it's not with the actual instrument. It's with like beats and stuff, which is where our generation was going. CJ. I mean, like you understand what I'm saying right now, CJ?
No, absolutely, man. And just to elaborate on that, I will say that the same reason why we have quote unquote trash music now is also the same reason why we have a lot more great artists. And it's because of overexposure. Like
Right.
there are way more platforms now for artists to, display their talents or lack thereof. And yeah, this is the result of it. Now just personally speaking, it does seem like, the trash stuff seems like it's, slipping through the cracks, more frequently. But, there are some good out there,
Right.
but it's just a case of you have to dig deeper to find it.
And I'm going to piggyback off what you said about slipping through the cracks. And I think that a lot of art and creativity is uh, falling through the cracks, especially I think with art. I don't think people our age, Jasmine, they don't really buy art or even go to like art exhibits. Do you ever hear about that online, or is that a trend or what?
As far as like consuming any media of art,
Yeah, like just
there's
paintings
a
and stuff like that.
um, some people kind of consider the collection of vinyl records a lost art. That's starting to arise because there's no substitution for that what they regard as that warm sound you get from vinyl. I mean, ever since like the early 2000s, the rise of the ringtones, with the rise of ringtones and Napster, before we even had LimeWire and all that, um, the whole business model of you become a famous artist, some record label comes and signs you, and you put your music out there for consumption with a whole monster behind you as far as music video and all this marketing behind you. Things have changed and things had to adapt. um, I believe that it might not be as mainstream as certain consumption of certain art may not be as mainstream as was before, but as scattered about as it is, it's adapted to the internet. There's all these different subcultures that have been able to be facilitated within internet culture. That there's not a monoculture anymore.
Right.
There's not um, several different, like, you don't have cable, so there's like three different stations and
Right.
everybody's watching it. When you
Got
do
it.
have cable, there's 50 stations. No,
Mhm.
there's so many different uh, avenues of influence and mediums and cultures that you can participate in and consume.
Right.
So I
Yeah,
hope
and
that answered it.
that does, and that actually does, and I actually want to just talk about that today because so much is there. There's so many options though, but I want to talk about what I consider the lost art. It's not lost, like Desmond said. Like there's so many subcultures around, but I want to just talk about some of the things that used to be just. I mean, if you were born maybe in the 2000s, maybe this wouldn't consider you, but I just remember CJ just growing up and just I didn't the first piece of poetry I ever heard about was Maya Angelou, and I remember seeing her on Oprah, and like and just like wow, she's a poet. That's all she's famous for. It's and it's like wow, you see this is a famous person off of words, and so that actually made me start writing. So just people like Maya Angelou and like poetry, or even going to these clubs to where you can hear poetry and music. You know what I'm talking about, CJ? You don't really hear about
Yeah,
that anymore.
no, man, not really. Like I know you're out in Dallas, I'm sure there's way more stuff out there, for that community. But here, as of right now, there's only one main place I can think of that the entire Shreveport Bossier poetry community can go to. Like before there used to be two major ones, but one of them shut down years back. So yeah, man, like you can ask anybody. A lot of associates of mine, are in that community, and yeah, we have this conversation all the time. Like it's tough. It's tough out here, man. Slim
It's tough
pickings.
out there. Well, you know what? This is why I'm glad we have this platform because I want to actually talk to some people who I think are a part of this lost art culture. They're not lost, but when it comes to mainstream and trends, you don't really too much hear about them. But we're gonna talk to more people who actually are being creative and part of this creative subculture with creative minds. It's an episode you don't want to miss. We're getting artsy, guys. Stay tuned.
I think straight up means to be able to speak in a way that is straight up, to be honest, and to speak your truth.
Raw, uncut, you know what I mean? It's blunt, straight to the point. This what it is.
It's just a place to be open and honest, and that's what I appreciate most about it. And it provides a place for community members to come together and just be straight up with each other about things that are going on in the world because it affects all of us.
Unfiltered, raw, with all the cursing that Calvin does.
Straight up is just being real, telling it like it is, being you.
Being solid, being who you are, no matter what it is, no matter what situation you're faced with, right? This is who you are. It really speaks to me saying it is what it is and it ain't what it ain't, straight up.
Okay, so I want to talk about something that when I was a kid, I remember coming home from school. I would watch Dragon Ball Z, and then my mom would put on Oprah Winfrey, and because Oprah came on before the 5 o'clock news, and so I just always remember watching Oprah, and she always had Dr. Maya Angelou on her show, and she had her on her show so much that I didn't know what poetry was. So my first taste of poetry was watching Maya Angelou on Oprah Winfrey. So when it comes to the lost art, I think that poetry, and when growing up, and then some of you probably don't even know that the Baltimore Ravens is based off of Edgar Allan Poe's poem, The Raven. So that's a little history lesson for you all because it was in Baltimore. And so that's just something that growing up, I used to hear about poetry and Dr. Maya Angelou. And even in high school, we had to do like a whole lesson on poems. But I think that when it comes to trends and everything's like popular right now, poetry is not as popular. It's popular still, but not amongst people of the millennial age. And I could be wrong, but to help me clarify that, I'm bringing in today, right now, help me introduce author, poet Tiffany Pennywell. Tiffany, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. And I talked to you before. I visited your Instagram pages, and your poetry uh, has definitely touched me and made me. I was like, damn, this is good poetry. Tiffany, you are author of one of the poem books. I'm sorry, Window to My Soul, and I'm pretty sure you have some more work, right?
Yes, I do. I have two other self-published poetry books, Face and Embrace Yourself and Follow My Downward Spiral, and I also have some poetry in a collection called Seemingly Strange and Unusual Tales that I co-wrote with author D.L. Holmes.
Okay, all right. So shout out to DL Holmes. Um, Tiff and Tiffany, I just want to ask your style of poems. Uh, what would you describe your style of poetry in some of your writings?
I'm gonna say mainly it is free verse. I don't have a rhyme scheme. Um, I just kind of write what flows from my mind to my pen. And I kind of let that do the writing for me. It's not a particular style. I don't know. It's kind of like writing song lyrics a bit. Like there's this song that's playing in my head, and I just want to get the words out on paper. And there may not be music, but I can feel it. I can feel a sort of rhythm in there, and that's what comes out in the poetry.
Wow. And I can actually relate to that because I spoke to you outside the show, and I just had to ask you, uh, where is your mind going? Like some of your poetry, like is it based off relationships or is it based off of something you experience? Like, what I mean, where do you get the concept for some of your poems?
Majority of my poetry is going to be based off of circumstances that I have been through. Um, when I write poetry, for the most part, it's therapeutic. Um, Sometimes I have a bit of an issue with understanding what I'm thinking or what I'm feeling. But if I take pen to paper or my thumbs to my cell phone, the words will come out written better than if I could say them out loud.
And that goes back to you just letting your pen do the talking for you.
Yes, it does. Um, it does the talking, and I listen to it, and then I learn more about myself that way.
And I mean, who inspired you to be a writer and a poet?
The first time I wrote a poem that I remember was for there was kind of a competition for a place where my mom was tutoring, and I decided to enter that. I got fourth place, but it was cool. It was a poem about Martin Luther King. Um, and then also I did some plays with Bossier Parish Community College. Um, and that led me to wanting to write more. Because I would study the script, and I just found it amazing that you could have this full production based off of words. My most major influence, though, would be Edgar Allan Poe. One day when I can't remember if it was middle school or if it was high school, I was done with some of my work early, and I felt like randomly writing, and I happened to be on a page in a notebook of Edgar Allan Poe, and I love his work how it's descriptive, but it's kind of flowy, and you kind of lose yourself in the rhythm of his words. And he was one of my biggest influences, and also I'm gonna say Emily Dickinson also.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
She
And
was kind of known for her melancholy. So,
yeah, and I know Emily Dickinson. And going back to Edgar Allan Poe, and I said that it was famous for The Raven, but I didn't know Edgar Allan Poe was dark. like he was. I've always heard his name, but just studying him in high school, I'm like, wow, man, he was going through some things.
Oh, he went through a lot of things. Actually, my favorite poem by him is Annabelle Lee, which was a poem written to someone that he had loved.
So I'm talking to you today about the lost art. So let's, you studied, you done poetry in school, you had a competition, you worked with Bipsy, and you're still doing it right now. Do you think that with TikTok and Facebook and all this stuff going on social media, do you think that poetry is a form of art that is lost?
I think in a way it can be buried within all of the challenges or trends that are out there. But if you dig deep enough, you'll find a lot of poets out there wanting to get their words out or share them with other people. I've been able to find a lot of poets via Instagram who share their work.
And so you think that Instagram is a great platform for other poets to connect and kind of maybe broadcast some of the poems that maybe it's not heard locally around town, or
I think it's one way to do that. On Instagram, you'll also find like a poetry community on there. You meet up with other poets and you could discuss your work, find new poetry that you like. Um, and it kind of makes you feel like you're not alone in your mission to write. Um, there's also a lot of events you can find as well, as people are using like Instagram and Facebook to advertise. I know in the Dallas area, I've seen a lot of like poetry slams and whatnot advertised. And in the Shreveport area, we've actually had a open mic or poetry feature. I think every Sunday in August, except for the past Sunday, at the Common Park downtown. And I actually got to be a part of that, and I was actually featured one of those Sundays. But it was awesome to be around those other poets or people who wanted to see poetry, because it's not really the main thing people think about when they're going for entertainment. But when people do find it, they like it because it's not of the norm. It's something different.
right? And I encourage that too, because I mean, I still haven't done it yet, but I definitely want to go to one of those jazz poem like nights where you just like it's really cool and you just snap your fingers and because when I think about poetry, going to see a live poetry, I think about that or Moesha with her journal. I mean,
Hmm.
I hate that song by the way. Uh, y'all know what I'm talking about. The Moesha like journal song. Oh, I hate it. Because it makes you like you're deep in thought. But so I think that point. I think, and I don't know if you can agree with me on this one, but like I think what you was kind of alluding to that it's out the norm, and I think that poetry makes people. It can help you be more intelligent because I mean, hip hop is like killing the music charts right now, but it is art. I don't want to take away from artistry at all, but hip hop is a rhyme scheme. It's a form of poetry, but sometimes now, people like you and I who can actually listen to words and actually dissect what they mean, uh, it's not to me. It's still poetry, but it's not connecting. You know what I mean? I mean, can you tell the difference? I mean, can you break down the difference between
Um,
like I mean, because there are some rappers who do tell stories, but now it's just like, what's the if I hear a song about like right now it's a song about WAP. I mean, but the song is popular right now, but we know what the acronym means. But it's like, okay, what's the story behind it? Like, what's this? Am I making sense to you right now?
yes, you do. Like, a lot of the stuff that's out, it's more for what's going to trend next, what's going to be popular. Um, I think that's also why it's important that a lot of the hip hop artists, um, writers and whatnot, to don't just look at the stuff that they do that's popular. Just like listen to all the songs on the album because you'll find hidden gems in there that actually shows more of their lyrical side, their talent for their writing, than just, hey, I can put this out here and it's going to be popular on TikTok or whatnot later on.
Okay. Wow. Speaking of, I want to dissect. I'm not saying I want to dissect hip hop, but I want to dissect one of your poems. Okay. This is me reading to you one of your poems. How about that? Um, it says, let me use my voice. Here we go. I wish I didn't throw it away. After all these years, I've spent most of my time looking through trash bags of memories, hoping to find it. And after many close finds, I seem to just as quickly lose it again. I didn't know it would be this hard to find something that I kept so close to me. It was so easy to lose it. Once I decided I needed to, but now my pride keeps running out of arm's reach. I just want to know at that time, it's an untitled poem, but you know, where was your mind when you wrote that?
Um, it seems like that was kind of a dark time. I was probably just thinking about my self-esteem. It's something that comes, it goes. It's something that's very hard to keep hold on to. And of course, your self-esteem can also be tied to pride and what you're doing. And during that time, I kind of felt sometimes that I'd be doing, well, maybe on top of the world, and then one or multiple things would happen. I would feel knocked down again, um, which kind of also closely ties into mental health, because a lot of my poetry ties into that, because it's something I like to look into and study, mostly for self improvement, for my life and for others around me also.
Well, I just want to say that this one day, just going through Instagram and uh, just saw one of your poems, and I wasn't even just try to even to seek it out. I just stopped and I read it, and it just fit to where I needed to hear those words at that time. And I had to reach out to you because your words it helped me. And like you said, people, especially now that we're all crammed up in the house with COVID-19 going on, like the mental health and depression, it's high. And especially, I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you all out there right now. I mean, it's depressing. Somebody who is high risk and has to be isolated in a home by themselves. I mean, it's scary. So uh, I want to thank you just because your words, just to know that I'm not alone and thinking so many things I'm thinking, and you having the courage to actually write what you're feeling, uh, and to let others know that, hey, you're not alone, and you may not even know you impacted somebody, but that's why I love your courage just to write your feelings out like that. And so just from that aspect, thank you, because we need more people like you to just use your words to express how you're feeling, but I mean how others are feeling too.
Mhm. Thank you for inviting me, and I just want to say that um I'm glad that that was able to help you through that. And that's one of the reasons why I write my poetry, in case that can touch someone or help someone. And one of my poetry books, Face and Embrace Yourself, that I put together, Face and Embrace Yourself is all about being able to look at your emotions, be able to see what your mind, your body, your soul's trying to tell you, and actually reading them, looking at them, learning to understand them, because they're telling you something for a reason. And if you actually listen to them, they will actually be able to help you. But too many times we run away from them, and then we can't help ourselves if we avoid them. So it's always best to just go ahead and face them.
Wow, you're a deep sister, Tiffany. Thank you. Before I let you go, tell people where they can find you on all your social media platforms, or where they can buy some of your books that you have written.
Oh, all of my books you can find on Amazon under Tiffany Pennywell. You can find me on Instagram under author Tiffany Pennywell. and you can find me on Twitter under author Pennywell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Tiffany Pennywell, writer, poet, author, and somebody that, I love. Tiffany, thank you once again.
Thank you.
Tired of the same old boring clothes? Want to support your favorite podcast but don't know how? Well, you're in luck. The Straight Up Show podcast store is finally here. In our Teespring shop, you can find all the merch that tells the world you're keeping it straight up. From t-shirts to masks to even leggings, our store has you covered. Just visit straightupshowpodcast.com and click that merchandise button. That's STR8 upshowpodcast.com.
Okay, so today's episode, like I said, we're talking about the lost art. As a millennial, we really don't know about. I've never grown up and just hearing about so much fashion and people are into poetry and art, but I don't. With social media today, you don't really see people. It's not really popular. It's still there, but people are interested in like visual and paint art. And so today I have somebody that I've known about, but this show has brought us to formally meet each other. Help me welcome Miss Jennifer, all the way from Kansas. She's an art teacher. How you doing today, Jennifer?
Hey, doing all right today.
All right, thank you so much for being on the show, and thanks for accepting this, so I can finally formally meet you, not in person but over Zoom. And just kind of side note, me and Jennifer's brother are best friends. He was my friend from 8th grade summer to now, and so been my best friend for most of our life. So thank you to her brother for letting me talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
Is this kind of
pandemic way to meet somebody, right?
Yeah, I mean, online. It's a COVID year, so why not? So Jennifer, just tell us about you and where you're from, and what do you do?
Well, I'm from Kansas. I've been an art teacher for 4 years. I do a lot of artwork on the side when I'm not teasing 16-year-olds and such. I do a lot of ink work and like really, really big artworks. They're usually about like 4 or 5 feet when I used to have the time to do it. And now I do a lot of commissions, so many people's cats, and then work to kind of share artwork with underprivileged youth. I work at a Title I school, so we are pretty poor and kind of in like an underprivileged area. So I work with kids to help them find a way to express themselves through art that they might not have the financial ability or the social ability to do otherwise.
Wow, and kudos to you for doing that. Just to have that outlet. Because I mean, not saying that. If people don't know, people who are in poverty and go to these underprivileged schools, they are some of the most talented people, because you do need that outlet of, expression and a form of escapism, you know what I mean? And I think that you and your teachers that do that, that's very commendable. That's why I'm trying to have the show today, because I don't think that a lot of kids have that outlet, because, they have music, which is like, popularized, and you have social media, which is like glorified. And they don't really have that mind to escape all the rhetoric and things going on home by painting. I think one of my favorite things was, this is probably before all our times, but Good Times off of what they had, the Jimmy Walker and okay, so you know that show. Okay, all right. So, and he grew up poor. He had like a 2-bedroom house with 5 kids or something like that, and he was an artist, and his art was going to get him out the ghetto. So I think to hear you do that, that's kind of like, you're aiding that. And that, to me, that's very phenomenal and very, very, very thought-provoking. So thank you on that. So let me just dive back into it. How did you get into art? I mean, what made you know that, when did you know that you had an artistic talent?
Well, I was a really shy kid. I did not like talking to anybody. I was awkwardly tall, looked like a guy for like a good chunk of my start. It was a thing. And so in Catholic school, You could choose to either go out and recess and play with everybody or stay inside and sit at a table. So I chose to stay inside and draw the whole time because that was easier than talking to people. And eventually I realized if I started a drawing in my sketchbook and then left it open on the table, people would come by and say, wow, that looks so cool. And then I wouldn't have to start talking to them. And so I would bring sketchbooks that I drew everything in and like set them on a table and pretend to draw on a corner so that people would come talk to me and I can make friends. So not at all lame, but I just kind of found that it helped me meet people. It helped me make connections. It helped me relax. Like I have diagnosed anxiety disorder and drawing grounds me very much so. And so it's all about being able to observe the world around you, connect with people in ways that you might not be able to connect with them otherwise, and then just express and create something from nothing. And it really gets me usually.
Wow, I like that. And there's nothing lame about that at all. You're talking to a guy who moved to a brand new apartment complex, went to the apartment's playground on top of the monkey bars and said, "Will you be my friend?" to the whole playground. So that's not lame at all. That's kind of my story. I do it to everybody right now. Like, hey, how you doing, buddy? Like everybody. So don't lame about that. I like to hear that. And so it's great to hear it. So like in today's time, we're going through a lot right now. And like I said, music and social media is the forefront of escapism. Do you think that like people, I guess, in our age range, I'm a little older than you, but it's our age range, like, do you think that they don't appreciate art or they don't really have the love for it that I guess maybe that I'm used to seeing when I grew up?
So I think the problem is that art is misinterpreted. It is not so much like a lost art. It's that people don't understand what qualifies as art. Think about Pinterest, or every like middle-aged soccer mom has like a crazy Pinterest board of all these crafts she wants to do around the house. They don't think of that as art because that's craft. You don't think of social media as art, even though you have Instagram taking pictures of everything and using really cool filters and selfies, and you've got so many social media formats that were all created by a digital designer. Everything's made for a visual, for a streamline, for efficiency. And when you're thinking of like social media, people have a very, very weird distinction between entertainment and art because they see art as something that's kind of bougie, that is elevated, and it's not. The problem is that we don't fund poor artists to paint on our walls anymore. And so we assume that anything that is like public expression or kind of pop culture, it doesn't count as art anymore. And it really does. Like taking selfies is something that was done back in the ancient times, is one way to put it. Renaissance artists used to paint themselves because, first of all, you couldn't really take a photo back in the day, but they would paint themselves to show that they were an artist, that they were painting. They wanted to be remembered. They wanted you to also remember their face. Women used to paint themselves painting, like an image of them painting, to prove that women can be artists, and that's a way to do it. And now we're seeing so many more icons show like photographic visuals. We're showing, oh, we're doing these amazing crafts, and here, let me share this on the internet. And somehow I can find a how-to that somebody in Canada posted on how to draw this certain thing, so I can draw it now. We've got such a big informational dump that is the internet now, that we're so used to seeing so many visuals and so many different kinds of art and things that we start discrediting it because it's not Van Gogh. It must not be real art. So I don't think there's a lack of appreciation. I think there's a lack of understanding, per se.
Wow, that's pretty deep, pretty heavy. I like to hear that. And one thing you mentioned that I really kind of, that really makes me think about art more is that it's not funded. a lot, because I mean, think about it. I mean, me, probably at the age of 19, 20, I couldn't afford a cheeseburger more than a piece of art. You know what I mean? So, I mean, so how does the funding part affect, I guess, the art industry and maybe the understanding and appreciation of art?
So I think the main problem is that when buying art nowadays, I get a lot of, well, I could buy that for $10 on Amazon. And I'm like, friendo, you're paying for so much more. You're paying for my time, you're paying for my experience, you're paying for my tools. If you look at Copic markers, you can just Google Copic markers and see why all artists are poor. They're like $8 a marker. It's insane. Um, and everything is very expensive, but people assume that if you are an artist, you should do it because you love it, not to get paid. But they don't really understand that to continue doing what you love, you need to get paid. And so they assume that you're going to give them free items or draw them because you love drawing and you love me. Why wouldn't you want to draw me? And so it ends up, a lot of artists end up not being able to make an income based directly off of art. And then to try to do an income on art, you really can't get it consistently because of fluctuations in the economy. You're right. If you can't afford basic needs like a hamburger, you aren't going to be like, I would really love a drawing of my cat for $70. So in times of poverty and in times of like an economic downturn, you really don't get a ton of commissions, and then you'll get them scattered throughout the year. Like I get a ton of commissions around holidays, like around Christmas I've had like 20, and then you'll have a dry spell until the next one. And so you can't really support yourself on art alone. You just can't, not nowadays.
And that sucks, man, because like you said, I think that the one about the women wanting to be remembered, I think about art, unless it's destroyed in the fire, but uh, art lasts forever. And I think that, I'm all about music, I'm all about poetry, but it's like, the creativeness that's implied with this art that you make, that's what makes it unique. Like, I mean, if we talk about social media art, I mean, look at Zanga. My Zanga account's gone now. And then people are like, what the heck is Zanga? Okay, it's like the first MySpace, Facebook. And and it's so ancient, but everything I created, quote unquote, is gone because the company's gone. So if I make some art that I did myself without social media, that lasts forever. And then you have a piece of me. Say if like, Jennifer becomes this well-known artist in Italy or something like that, then 100 years from now, when we're long and gone, well, let me trace back to Jennifer's roots. Oh, this is her son, or something like that. Like, and it goes back to like, okay, well, my mom did this 100 years ago. That's a piece of like, well, look, Mona Lisa is still here. People love that art, and it's still here after. I mean, it's been duplicated so many times, but that piece of art lasts forever. So I mean, so that's kind of why I love the distinction that you have, and we have to find a way to support these artists because, and I'll post a lot of Jennifer's work on our social media page, but I mean, she is a phenomenal artist. I saw what actually made me contact you was I saw the piece that you did with your niece and your sister-in-law, and your brother. Sorry, your brother and your niece, and I was like, holy hell, man, this is neat. Let me have to contact her. And
Thank you.
and I knew you could draw, but I just didn't see anything like that before. I mean, that was phenomenal. I want to switch over to just kind of pick your brain a little bit.
Okay.
And so you're an artist and you're about to make a new drawing. Like let's take your brother and the picture you did for your brother, I guess. Just
Yeah.
so here I am, Jennifer, sitting at my desk, got my artist tools in hand. Take me through your mindset. What are you thinking? What goes through your mind? What's like step one, step two, and what makes you satisfied as a complete piece of art?
Whew, okay. So I don't usually just sit down and go, I'm gonna make art now. It's usually something that you see visually out and about. Uh, Diana spams me with pictures of my adorable niece, and so that one was a little easier to go, I want to paint that girl, she's so cute. But a lot of the times when you're out and about, like walking around and you see something in nature, or like I creep on people all the time. I'll be walking through and I'm like, oh my gosh, that woman's cheekbones are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen in my life. I would love to draw somebody like that. And then you can go home and look for references. And the most important thing about drawing is that you have a reference. People always want to be creative and create directly from their mind, like a true artiste. But to work with proportions, to work well with lighting, you need to use the resources you have. So look up references. You can like hodgepodge like 5 different images together to get what you want. I have so many weird Google searches of women looking down to the right, so you can get like the poses right and all of that. Then you just work from the basics and build up from there. You start blocking in by the simplest shapes, slowly kind of carve into the paper with the different shading that you like. And then typically I attack it with paint and then finish it off with ink. And it takes me a while to figure out if I like it. A lot of the times when I'm finished with a piece, I've spent too long staring at it that I usually need to walk away from it for a little while and then come back to finish it up. Just because when you look at something too long, you're going to either find everything wrong with it, or you're just going to be so disinterested that you don't even know if it's good or not. And so you can come back to it with fresh eyes later and finish it all up from there.
Wow, I'm glad you said that, because that was my next question to you. And I do music sometimes, and it's like I get so lost in creating the music that I have to, like, I look at the clock and the next thing I know, it's 3 hours later, because I'm just fondling with it. And it's just, that's so amazing that you do the same thing.
Oh, everybody does. And I have thrown out so many sketchbooks. I think one thing that's really funny too, and I noticed that it happens with my students as well, is that progression is so cringy. Like, you can progress so much in your art within a year that you look at the stuff that you did a year ago that you were like, this is amazing. And then you go, oh my gosh, we need to burn it all with fire. I hate this. I hate the way this looks. Like looking at something from 10 years ago. And instead of looking at like, wow, this is how far I've come in such a short amount of time, you just toss it all.
Yeah, I do that with music as well. I mean,
yeah,
I do that with music all the time. That's Jennifer. Wow, just it's so amazing to hear you say this, because it's like, man, just I'm a music person. I create music. I don't really do like the hip hop, whatever you want to associate me with. But it's just, when I make something and I'm the same way, I go back to listen to old beats I made and it's just like horrible. But I think some of my best work is some of the work that I hated and people love it, and it's weird. So we're kind of winding down with Jennifer. So to those, what's your message to those who you said that don't appreciate art, but if you were to sell yourself on why people should be artists, what's your selling point? What would you say to them?
So I think being an artist is not about being marketable. And I think that is something that people have a very hard time coming to terms with. I have a first lesson that I do with all my kids, because all kids always say, I'm a terrible artist and I don't want to do anything in your class. And I have them play a game called Genius or Bogus. And what they do is they have to guess if the painting I put up on the board is either done by a genius artist or by a 4th grader. And I'll be honest, they get it wrong most of the time. And the idea is that if somebody can make $1.5 million off of painting a straight line on a canvas, no joke, actually happened, then you can learn how to draw something. You can learn how to draw the smallest things, because you have to work your way up. You keep looking at the end of the finish line when you're looking at people posting their art, and you're looking at try number 80 instead of try number 1. because you haven't seen all of the different copies that they've burned or messed up on, or the eye was off and it all looked terrible. You need to understand that you're starting from the starting point and build on it like any other skill you would. You wouldn't skip to calculus before you learned how to do basic times tables. So just take it easy on yourself, start slow, and keep working, because it will get better.
Yeah. And if you all are listening out there and you're in high school or you're in college, you think math does not play a big part in your life, trust me, it does. I hated math. And in high school and in college, I thought I would never use it. Then I worked at a TV station and we had to do graphic art, right? And it was visuals. And guess what the art consisted of? If you had the wrong shape, it consisted of geometry and dealing with the right dynamics and the shapes. And if you didn't have the X the right way or the Y or the Z the right way, your art would come out. So math is a big part of art, and you will need it in your life. Trust me. So if you have friends out there that they're math teachers, tell them that, hey, I apologize for being a dummy in high school and brushing math off, because it's very important. I was like, dynamics, geometry in a news station? No. And I'd like to hear this, because to COVID, this whole COVID year and this new year, COVID has been rampant, and I got very depressed. I mean, who hasn't? I mean, everybody's been depressed this year and last year and early this year. And one thing my therapist told me to do was to draw in a coloring book. And I'm like, what? That's like so elementary. And it's crazy. So I'm a big superhero buff recently, which is weird, because I was like, anybody that was listening to superheroes in high school, I was like, you a punk, whatever. And here I am. I'm like loving all these superhero stuff, right? And so I downloaded like a Marvel coloring book. I'm like, this is so elementary, but I'm over here drawing Wolverine and stuff and coloring. I'm like, wow. But it's so therapeutic. And it gets me away from social media. Seeing all the negativity on social media, all the somewhat, I guess, negative music too. And it just clears my head, and I feel so much better. And like I said, it gives me that form of escapism, and so kudos to you and what you're teaching these children, especially in the lower income neighborhoods, because that, you may not think that it's not hitting. I mean, come on, you're a teacher, so I mean, you won't reach every student, but just the fact that you can inspire one student, and hopefully that student can inspire somebody else. I mean, just being a teacher, period, you have all my respect, but being an art teacher, you're definitely giving those students a chance to get away from the issues they may have at home.
Well, thank you.
Welcome. You're welcome. And so before we go, how can people, you have a new social media page for all your artwork, and how can people reach you and maybe get in contact with you, maybe doing some work for them?
I've only got a Facebook page right now. It's called Jen's Coloring Book. I post some commissions I do there. Sometimes I post outlines so people can color them in. And I also post some of my art lessons too. So I've done some on teaching people how to color forms. So even if you aren't looking for a commission, sometimes it's a good way to kind of brush up on being an artist.
Well, there you have it. Jennifer, thank you once again for coming on the Straight Up Show podcast. And like I said, I hope you extend the invitation to come back on our show.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been fun.
All right, you're welcome. And we'll have a link to all Jennifer's work on the description page of this episode.
Here at Straight Up, we know that all lives matter, but historical events have shown that there is an inverse power dynamic between the races in our country. To highlight this, we present our Black Lives Matter merchandise, because let's be real, some of you don't seem to understand that this isn't the organization, but a message. That message: end inequality towards minorities in America. And just in case that's too complicated for you in English, we have the phrase translated into 10 different languages. Visit StraightUpShowPodcast.com for this and all our other merch. That's STR, the number 8, showpodcast.com. Shirts as low as $19.99. Hey everybody, Lee here. And guess what? The reviews are in and the Straight Up Show podcast is a hit. Don't believe me? Well, listen to what one of our guest panelists, Dr. Monique Thompson, has to say.
Listen, y'all listening to Straight Up and support this podcast, because I listened in before I came on the show. I liked what I heard. They're really focusing on keeping things real and being real with you, and I like that approach. So you guys support this podcast.
So if you want to listen, donate to the show, have a subject idea, or even want to be a guest, just contact us at straightupshow@gmail.com. That's straightupshow@gmail.com.
Man, I learned something new today. That was some good interviews. I mean, I think some of the most creative art comes from pain, like Tiffany was saying about just what she goes through and where her art comes from. And sometimes she just lets her pen do the talking for us. And like, especially with COVID going on, there are so many people who are going through emotions, and and yeah, music can get you through it, but like, just imagine what the art you can create if you put your pen to a pad. So, y'all, I mean, we're at a time to where we do avoid complicity, and I have to agree with Daz on that one. And I'm encouraging you, even like the old hip hop heads, go back to listen to, look at the pimps and the rhyme schemes in the '70s, like Dolomite. Dolomite is a big. If it wasn't for Dolomite, you would probably hear rap music. Because that's where rap came from, people like Dolomite. But you have to go a step further. So Dolomite got that from a homeless person in the streets going through pain. And so this is how crazy it is. Even right now, I do one step further. I go talk about, we talk about police brutality, but that was NWA, and it got hated on about that, but they were telling you how it was in the streets. And so, I mean, whatever you're going through right now, I encourage you not only to create your own type of art, but venture out to stuff. One, get out your comfort zone and look at the people, even going back to like mythology. And even if you want to get biblical, go back in the Bible and see where all this art is there in the Bible and what people did to. We're all going through a tough time right now, and we need an outlet. I'm not gonna lie, sometimes it may take you to get off your phone or get off your computer and actually read a book, or go to a social distance art exhibit, or learn how to play some music if you go on YouTube, or learn how to speak 2 languages, be bilingual, but I challenge you to go out your comfort zone and create your own art, because you never know what you do today can be a legacy tomorrow.
Got the time.
Yeah, got the time. All right, so we want to thank you so much, Dasmine and CJ, for once again being my co-host today. Once again, your invitation is always welcome on the show.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it anytime.
Thank y'all for y'all's wild words. Thank you for our guests today. Until then, we want to keep the conversation going. Well, we hope you join the conversation with us. You can talk to us, see all our stuff online, on all our social media platforms. You can go to our website, straightupshowpodcast.com. That's straightupshowpodcast.com. There you can buy our merchandise. You can go to our Patreon page if you want to support our Straight Up Show podcast. We have 4 tiers. They're $3, $5, $10, $20, different levels. Each one has a different perk with it. Hope you support us. But until then, there's only one rule to our show is you gotta be straight up.
Straight up.
My brain hurts. It's in constant chaos as I try to unscramble the pieces and yet try again to make my picture whole. For even if new pieces are found, their shape distorts what I saw, what I used to see in myself. My picture, now unrecognizable, has jagged and sharp edges that just do not compute, that they will take time to fit. And I am tired, oh so tired, of looking at my picture without knowing who I am, understanding who I am. I am a stranger unto my own self, as I try to be complete and normal for everyone else.